And we are live with a slight delay. Hello everyone, I got a few viewers here today. Just let me know how the audio is. How is the audio? Just typing at the same time. Can you hear me out there? Welcome back to COMM-3073, COMM for General Arts. Today we don't have as much content to go through. All right, thank you, Mr. Matthews. You can hear me. Since we've moved online for the remainder of the semester, I've had to switch it up a little bit. Obviously, we don't have as many in-class assignments, so I'm going to try to work things as best I can in this new context. I think a class like COMM really works better when we're all together in a room, so we can do exercises, I can call on you. So I'm just going to do my best in the live stream format. I've modified a little bit of the content. Today we'll be talking about goals, workflow, and time management, a little bit about social media in the context of communications for business, for your professional life in the future. I hope to get done just about under an hour. And I'm keeping an eye on that chat box there. If you have any questions, I am watching, and I'll let you know. I don't know if this link works. I hope it works. Okay. Let me just, again, I've been doing this at the top of every class. Our new FOL schedule. Your revision assignment was due way back on Friday, March 27th. It is on my grading pile. I'm going to get to that probably next. And then after that, your summary assignment should have come in on Friday. So if you haven't done that yet, please do it as soon as you can. And then you have your research report and your individual presentations. So we're looking at Friday 3rd, that was this Friday that just passed, this Friday coming up for your actual research report, and then your individual presentations by the 24th. Now, because of the pretty extraordinary circumstances we find ourselves in, these deadlines are really strong suggestions about how you want to do your time management. Just because classes have been canceled doesn't mean people are sitting around all day. You might have other responsibilities, taking care of parents, of maybe people's children are home. I realize the situation is what it is. So nevertheless, try and keep to these due dates so I can provide you feedback and I can get those grades in as quick as I can. For the individual presentations, right, you take that research report, you turn it into slides, and then you screen capture, you take a video, or you just write me a script of what you would say to go with your presentation. All right. Everything is online on FOL. We have instructions. Hopefully they're detailed enough. So your research report was, of course, about soft skills in business communications. Your starting point is an article with the Harvard Business Review. Then you're supposed to do research on the topic. I hope that makes sense. I hope you're working hard and all your classes are going as smoothly as they can be. I know for Fanshawe classes were kind of split into two kinds, right? Some of the stuff that could transition online right away, and some of the stuff that had to be kind of put on hold until people can meet in person again. I know some people who are working like directly with like automotive programs and things like that. You just can't transition online the same way. So I hope all your classes are working more or less online now. So usually when I do this content here, I do it pretty differently. So I've radically changed the contents I have on goals, workflow, and time management for our online context here. And one of the questions I always ask people, my students, is if they have a clear sense of their workflow. Now, workflow is a bit of a technical term, so I'm not using it in the literal sense. Really, I just want to point to the idea of whether or not you've consciously adopted a way of working. I think this is really important, especially because we're working from home right now, and that can be, it's certainly for me very unusual. Finding a schedule is hard. I have kids at home, responsibilities. Um, but a workflow is a pattern of activity that is enabled by kind of the organization of your resources into processes. What does that mean? Well, my resources could be like, my time, my laptop, the FOL, so on, and how I turn that into a work process. So when you begin work, right, I mean, do you have a plan, or do you just kind of start and see how it goes? You just kind of jump in. It's like, well, I have a half an hour to work on this. I better just start. Or do you come in with a plan? Over here, I have an article from National Public Radio. It's called "Work from Home Tips." So you can kind of look at their. I think my screen is actually in the way of the actual tips. Let me just. There we go. Right. So get your tech in order. Check your bandwidth. Plan around kids. Manage your expectations. That means being realistic. Embrace the webcam. Stay connected. Do what you can and discuss what you don't. Probably the most important one is right there, number 10. Do what you're able to do, but make sure people know what you're not able to do. In this case, for example, me, right, if you're not able to get something in on time, right, send me that email, tell me what's going on, and we can find an arrangement. We can work together. Let me see if I can get this. Maybe, come on, move, let's move. There we go. Let's get this guy up here. Yeah, as you can tell, I'm a little bit more casual now. Into week 4 of quarantine or whatever this is. I'm dressing a little more cash around the house. Everyone okay out there? It's so weird to be here in my basement. Don't hear you guys. I don't know what's happening. Just let me know in your comment box how your lives are going, whether everything's okay, and that your loved ones are safe. So far, so good on my end. Knock on wood, everybody's healthy and safe. So, like I said, workflow is a kind of a technical term we often use in automation, factories, robotics, that sort of thing. But it's certainly helpful for me to think in terms of the resources I have and how I can use those resources to create an effective work process. Right? So, the amount of time I have. Do I have an hour of pure undistracted time, or do I have 2 hours of kind of slightly ambiently distracted time? How good's my internet connection? What are my study habits? Do I have study habits? What about just my ability to concentrate on a task? How long can I actually work on something before my ability starts declining? And how do I stop working when it's no longer productive for me to work? What resources do I have? What is the college giving me? What is the institution giving me? Right? Do I have people I can ask? Friends, family, the professor, right? These are all things you can consider when you're thinking of how you get work done. And when you're thinking about your workflow, I really want to emphasize that an important thing to not do is multitask. Don't multitask when you work. Just task. Right? It's people don't actually multitask. We switch task. Right? You can't do more than one thing at a time. The term used and there's research on this. Psychologists have researched task switching. And the consensus is that task switching from one task, hold on, I got a notification. That's a joke. Task switching is actually cognitively expensive. What that means is that your brain finds it hard. Lots of research here on task switching, and here's what we know, right? It takes more time to get your tasks done if you switch between them than if you do them one at a time. You are more prone to making errors when you switch than if you do one thing at a time. And the more complex is the thing you're trying to do, the longer it will take and the more errors there will be. Now, even if your task switch only wastes like 1/10 of a second, if you do a lot of it, you can add up to a 40% loss of productivity. That's from the True Cost of Multitasking in Psychology Today. You can follow through that link. So I want to really caution you against the idea that you can do many things at once. My main task switching problem is my smartphone. All right, I pick it up, I have a look, I look at my email, I say, oh, I just need to answer the student email real quick, and I'm just switching tasks. But that is a bad idea. So instead, what we should be doing when we're thinking about creating a work pattern is setting, and I'm going to focus on the idea of setting SMART criteria. So when you're setting out to work, you should focus on your goal, and your goal should meet these 5 criteria, and that's how you're going to create a useful workflow. So let's start by talking about what these SMART criteria are, and then I'm going to move on to that to like how to actually use your time effectively. So when you're working on whatever it is you're doing, it could be schoolwork, it could be any work, your goal should be what you do is specific, it's measurable, it's realistic, it's achievable, it's attainable, it's relevant, and it's time bound. If your goals are SMART, it's the criteria themselves that will create a natural workflow that will accomplish them. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based. What does this mean? Well, I have a GIF here, but I think my screen is on the GIF. It's Jake Peralta going smart noise. Okay. I'm gonna just cover this GIF up. It's distracting. So the first thing you should have is a specific and measurable goal. Now, often our productivity, our ability to get something done, is frustrated, is impeded by goals that are either too ambitious or too vague. Often things are vague because they're ambitious. For example, a goal like, oh man, I need to work on my research report. That's too vague. It's too broad to be a good SMART criteria. Work on something. So what you should do is not have a vague goal like that. You should have something specific and measurable, like write some number of words. I need to write 300 words today. I need to write 250 words in section A. I need to find 3 sources for section B. Right? This is specific and it's measurable. I know what I need to do. I need to write this many words. And I know how to measure it. I know at the end whether I've accomplished it or not. So crucial to making your goals is to find these really big projects you're trying to do and break it down into a set of smaller subtasks that are specific and measurable, so you know exactly when you've accomplished the goal. Right? So your goal can be, a good goal is graduate from college. That's specific and measurable. But then you break it down into subtasks, which means I should pass all my classes. If I pass all my classes, that means I should pass COMM. If I pass COMM, I should do the assignments. If I'm doing the assignments, I should work on the report. If I work on the report, I should have, what's my goal? Today I'm going to write 200 words for my report. Right? So now they have a hyper-specific goal. It contributes to the overall goal, but a specific and measurable subtask. And if you could break down every big thing you want to do into small, manageable units. And I love having checklists. There's nothing I like more than just making a full checklist of everything I need to do, then crossing it off. All right, how's everyone doing out there? We're good? Just checking on the chat window. We're just listening. Oh, this star was supposed to be over the... why is it not? It's supposed to be over here. This we're supposed to be censoring ourselves a little bit. How did that happen? So another critical aspect of SMART criteria, making goals that are specific, that are measurable, but are also achievable and relevant. So this means knowing what your resources are. Right? So if you can't write 500 words in a sitting, that's fine. Your goal should be 250 or less, or whatever you're able to do. What's crucial about this is that I think if you make a habit of setting achievable goals, you'll be able to work more effectively. because then you're able to just like say subtask, subtask. So I get into this thing myself. Sometimes I don't get work done because I tell myself, I look at my clock, gosh, I only have 20 minutes. I won't be able to get anything done in 20 minutes. What I need to have is the perfect situation. I need to, have had my coffee. Maybe I slept well. I have 3 hours. Otherwise, if I have 45 minutes and a bit of a headache, you know what? It's Netflix time. So that. But if I have everything done into small, achievable chunks that I could just say, oh yeah, I can do this tiny little chunk of work in the 20 minutes I have, then you'll actually get more done. Especially if you make a habit of it, because then you'll be always in it. Any goal you can actually accomplish with the resources you have is absolutely a goal worth having, as long as it's relevant to what you're doing and contributes to the larger project. Relevancy is kind of tricky, right? Sometimes I tell myself I'm on the internet because I'm doing research, because 1 out of every 100 links I see is something that makes me think, oh, I should put that in a slide for my classes. But I'm not actually doing relevant work when I'm on my phone scrolling through Reddit or Instagram or whatever. So when you're making relevant work, you have to make sure that you're actually contributing something to the project. So again, have a good habit of achievable small-scale goals that you're able to do given the resources you have, and that are especially relevant to your overall project, your overall endpoint here. And finally, let's talk about the T in SMART. I think the single most important aspect of SMART isn't the SMART. It's not the specificity, the measurability, the achievability, the relevancy. It's really the time-boundedness, right? This means you're really setting aside a time frame in which to complete your goal. Now, this time frame itself probably should be SMART. It needs to be specific and measurable and achievable, right? So your goal should fit into a small, definite time frame. Earlier, I was saying that one bad work habit I have is that if I don't have like an hour or 2 hours, I won't get started on anything. That's a bad habit. What you should have are SMART goals that you're able to fit into compressed chunks of time, as short as 15 or 25 minutes. These smaller chunks of time are good because, in fact, they force your goals to become more SMART. Now, I recommend a technique called the Pomodoro technique. The Pomodoro technique for time management is so called because Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, and the Italian grad student that kind of wrote a book about this technique used this kitchen timer here, this tomato-themed kitchen clock, right? Like if you're making like a 10-minute egg. So you're going to set aside an interval of time, traditionally 25 minutes, to accomplish your SMART task. According to the Pomodoro technique, you should then take a short 5-10-minute break. Have a walk around the house, right? Get a snack, play a game, whatever it is you want to do, 5-10 minutes. Then you complete another Pomodoro, right? So the ideal workflow for me is to think of a goal I can accomplish in 20 minutes, accomplish that goal, take a break, and do it again. And this got me through grad school. The Pomodoro technique, 100%, that's how I finished my dissertation. Oh, just realized my video here is on top of the tomato clock here. Let's put it back down in the corner. There's a cute little tomato clock. Yeah, the tomato clock got me through grad school. I would get up in the morning and think I should really work on my PhD. This 250-page thing I have to write, and that was a vague, ambitious goal. Especially when you have, I had a toddler in the house, it felt completely impossible. So I did the Pomodoro thing, and I said, well, you know what? I have 15 minutes right now. What can I do in 15 minutes? And at first, I was not sure. I was like, oh gosh, what can I do in 15 minutes? So I said, just write. You can write 100 words. If you can write 100 words in the next 15 minutes, you can cross a Pomodoro off your list. And once I started doing it, I found I could do maybe 4 or 5 Pomodoros in the time where Before, I was just watching Netflix. I told myself, I don't really have time to do anything. But then I'd look for little Pomodoros. I'd like, oh gosh, I have time for like 2 Pomodoros if I play it right. I get excited. I start hunting for them. I became so productive. It was great. So for the Pomodoro technique, you decide on a goal. You set the timer and you work on that goal. During your Pomodoro time, no multitasking, right? You close all the web pages that are relevant to your goal. Mute your phone. You're not allowed to look at it. You're only working on the goal. You're only allowed that distraction during your break. Right? Sometimes I do this, like if I'm grading your papers, I'll start doing Pomodoros of papers. Okay, I'm going to grade papers for 15 minutes, and at the end of 15 minutes, I can check Facebook. Because otherwise, I'm like, Facebook, student paper, Facebook, student paper. Right? But I'm much more productive if I'm Pomodoroing. Right? After you do 4 Pomodoros, right, take a longer break. You could take a 20-minute, half an hour break, then you start again. Right? And you set the timer. The timer's a little arbitrary. It depends on your ability to concentrate, how much time you have. I go for like a 15 to 20-minute Pomodoro because that's about all the concentration I can have on a task in a row here. Right? And there's lots of smartphone apps that will be your Pomodoro timer for you. So I really strongly recommend you at least try it out. See if it works for you. All right? So decide on the task, set the timer, work on the task, take a break, and after you've done 4 of them, take a longer break. So every semester, this is what I usually do. Usually I don't have slides about this. This is my first semester with Pomodoro slides. Because usually I don't teach Pomodoro, we do Pomodoro. So every semester, this is what we would have done this week if we were together. I would have sat down with every student and said, look, where are you on your research report? What have you done? All right, they might say, I haven't started yet, or I've chosen a topic, I have 1 source, I have 2 sources. So one by one, I just go through everyone, I say, where are you in your project? And we agree, based on where they are in their project, on a SMART goal to be completed within 1 Pomodoro's worth of time. So I'll sit down with a student, I'll be like, okay, what are you working on? It's like, well, I'm working on my introduction. I'm like, okay, I'm going to set the clock. What do you think you can do in 15 minutes in your introduction? Do you think you can write the whole introduction? Do you think you can write 100 words of the introduction? And then we agree on a SMART goal. Say, write 100 words of the introduction. I set the clock. And I do this, I go one by one through all the students. And when the time is up, 15 minutes is up for each student, I check in. So I'm just going around. By the time I'm done the last student, it's time to check in on the first student. So it usually works out pretty well, and I check in. Then, during this check-in period, we ask, well, what was the deal with the workflow here? Right? Was the goal accomplished? Did you manage to finish your introduction? Why or why not? Was the goal too big? Was it not, in fact, achievable? Right? Was it relevant? You know, did you say, oh, I need to do some research? Doing some research is vague. Usually when a student says, I need to do more research, I say, that's good. I want you to finish your Pomodoro with 2 sources or 3 sources that you're definitely going to use. All right? Forcing you to be efficient. So if the goal wasn't accomplished, we ask ourselves, what can we do to make a better goal next time? Something that can be accomplished within the 1 Pomodoro. By the end of the 2-hour class, usually we've done 3 or 4 Pomodoros, and it's time for a longer break. And you'd be amazed the amount of work we get done in that focused 2-hour session. So that's what I usually do. Instead, I'm just telling you about Pomodoros, instead of doing what I actually want to do, which is just doing them with you. So I encourage you, you have so many classes, everything's been canceled, we're working from home, it could be hard to work from home. I encourage you to try Pomodoroing your way through the rest of your semester online. Just give it a try. Give it a try. Okay, let's talk a little bit. Here's some other content I often do for COMM classes. Let's talk a little bit about the soft skills surrounding social media in the workplace. So COMM is a business communication class focused on soft skills. Increasingly, social media is like a more and more central part of business. right? Everything's moved online in this pandemic, so it behooves us to think a little bit about how we can communicate professionally in terms of social media. Generally, there are kind of three areas of kind of social media usage that are crucial for business communications. Was that whiplash moving from Pomodoro to this? I'm looking at the chat box, and it's pretty quiet. So there are three aspects of social media use. And we're looking at marketing, looking at internal communication, and we're looking at personal use. And each really got to think a little bit about if you have any three under your responsibility, that you should be carefully managing it. So let's talk first quickly about marketing. So social media and marketing is a lot more complex than the things we might think about in terms of like search engine optimization, which is making sure that people using Google or whatever to research a topic, to find a business, find you first. It's a lot more than just buying a Facebook ad. It's a lot more than just creating a Twitter account for your brand, for your company, for yourself. I mean, all these things are essential. Today, companies are using live video, they're using chatbots, social listening, user-generated content, referral traffic. So I have an article here. If you're interested in this aspect of things, a good entry point is this article I linked to on this slide. So I'm just thinking in terms of your future CVs, right? So you'll be on the job market eventually. Being able to say you know a little bit about social media and marketing could be just a talking point. You don't need to say you're an expert at it. But if you know a little bit, as long as you know more than the next guy, you have an advantage. So obviously social media marketing can just be regular advertising sent through Twitter or Facebook. You could just reuse whatever assets you have from your regular campaigns. But traditional advertising, right? I don't know how much this one cost, but we have like 939 views, which for the official PepsiCo account with millions of followers, there's not a lot of return on investment here. In fact, people are more and more moving towards something called content marketing. So content marketing is a strategy that generates content that doesn't really directly sell the product. The idea is you want to build a relationship with the audience you have already through the brand. What I mean by content and relationship building is, for example, say you manufacture guitars. So it would be not too expensive to create tutorial videos on how to play. Maybe you can even feature a famous musician in the blog, right? And this way the brand is associated with content that's valued. You're not trying to sell your guitars necessarily. You can kind of plug them in the background. You could talk about them a little bit. But the main driver isn't it's not the fact that it's an advertisement, because it's not. It's content that people actually want to see. See, people don't really want to follow brands on social media if there's no value. There's too much promo, why follow? Right? In order to build a relationship with your audience, you have to have content that's actually valuable. So here's some actions that make people unfollow a brand on social media. So if you're responsible for social media at your workplace, or they're looking for someone who's responsible, you could say, oh, I know what to do. And I know what not to do, right? So why do people unfollow a brand on social media? Number one, too many promo messages, right? It's not relevant to them. Right? The content, it's just irrelevant, doesn't have value. Tweet too much. Right? Those are kind of that's if you put all these together, they don't add up to 100. I guess you could have more than one reason. All right. So you can, if you're interested in this, of course, I got a couple more links here, right? So what social media channels do small businesses use? If you have a small business, Facebook and Instagram are your number one channels to leverage, and how you're going to want to do that. Not too many promo messages, keep things relevant, and generate value for the people that you're kind of pushing messages on. How do you create content? That's actually a pretty complex question. These are slides that I created for the 6,000 level COMM a few years ago, where this material had to be a bit more in depth. I'm not going to talk about this. You can just kind of follow these links here if you're interested in content marketing, but I think you grab the general idea of what content marketing actually does. Or a little whiplash, yes. All right. Another aspect of managing social media for your company is what to do if there's a crisis. By which I mean, what if something happens and all of a sudden there's a big internet backlash, which can happen, right? So if you're facing a social media crisis with your company or yourself, it's good if you already had a plan in place for it. Right? If you're able to respond quickly and you know who to talk to, you know what players to involve. You're going to want to perform an audience scan. How are people reacting? Are we dealing with a small group that is blowing things out of proportion, or do we have an overall image problem where we really need to deal with it? Right? Monitor your social media presence for early warning before like the tsunami of internet criticism hits you. Respond quickly and authentically, right? So here's an example. McDonald's Twitter campaign goes horribly wrong with McD stories, right? They were supposed to, Twitter campaign by McDonald's, you're supposed to share kind of heartwarming stories. Fingernail into my Big Mac, hospitalized for food poisoning. Lost weight after I quit eating at McDonald's. So these are not the kind of stories I think McDonald's wanted. So if you're in charge of creating a social media crisis plan, what you're going to want to do is find successful responses to social media problems, engage in that research, and create a crisis plan. These are all skills that, by the way, we've developed in this class. We know how to do a research report. We know how to do good research. We know how to put together these things into, say, for example, a talk to executives. Right? So these are opportunities in your workplace that could arise. Social media, why don't we skip this? Big data, we don't need to. Let me talk a little bit, moving on to social media for employee communication. Social media is more than Facebook and Instagram. It's becoming increasingly like an office productivity tool, right? It's more than just emails back and forth. Increasingly, companies are going to have like internal company websites where a lot of the work is going to get shunted to. You already have familiarity with this as students because our office productivity tool is FOL, right? Everything's online. You send your messages through there, your assignments are there, your grades are there, right? So it's a lot more than just email. We have an entire kind of productivity suite with message boards, and a lot of social media companies have actually pivoted and started offering these kind of sites. So Facebook has one, Microsoft has one. So HR departments are doing this, right? R&D is doing this. So there's all these collaboration tools. So here's the Facebook one. It's called Workplace by Facebook. Microsoft Teams is another big one. So they're kind of using kind of a pseudo social media format, but the social aspect is really just your business. It's the people you're connected to, the other employees. So employees are forming these virtual work groups, exchanging ideas on message boards, and often we're using the framework of kind of an integrated media solution online, a bit like FOL for your entire workplace. So one of the things that I've been meaning to talk to Fanshawe about this class is that there's a focus on writing a professional email, writing a professional letter, but these are old technologies. Increasingly, because we are moving to these technologies, we're going to have to update the course content so people are familiar with and are able to navigate these new tools with confidence. I also want to flag, of course, that when you're going to be using social media, whether it's internal software or external social media, like a Twitter account, there might be internal rules on social media and legal rules, especially if you're representing the company. Right? Elon Musk famously tweeted about the share prices for his company, and the Security and Exchange Commission had to decide whether it constituted stock manipulation, because if the CEO of the company, right, is causing the shares to go up or down by his tweets, he has a financial stake in that. So everything you post online is a legal liability and an investment at the same time. What that means is that you should be at least aware of company rules about what you post. I know there's a guy in Google who got into trouble for a memo he posted online with, I think it was internal to the company's own message board. So you just got to be careful. Which leads us to just kind of a warning I have about email and social media, not email, but social media personal use. So here's an article called "He's Fired, Who's Next?" Just a quote here: heated debate over how employers wary of brand damage through social media are delving ever deeper into the personal spheres of their workers, demanding even low-level employees tailor private communication and off-hours behavior to uphold a corporate image. Gone are the days when only misbehaving senior executives were seen as prominent enough to tarnish a firm's image. So the worry here is that behavior on social media, if you're on your personal Twitter account and you end up on the wrong end of an internet controversy, you can end up fired. So just, there's worries here. I mean, I have a bunch of worries, right? One of them is that, right, this kind of blurring of public and private lives between work and your personal life. I don't like the idea of people getting fired for speech. That's a little crazy to me. So on the other hand, the things you say, you have responsibility for them. And there's probably lines whereas I think it's legitimate for an employee to be wary because it could actually compromise your ability to perform your work duty. What this means, I don't know. It's a debate. I just want to flag it. It's not just about how you use social media at your work. It's also about out of your work. But if you need guidelines for just staying out of trouble on social media, if you're going to do something for it, we'll just do it anonymously. That'll help you. But if you want to stay out of trouble on social media, not have repercussions in your work life, obviously, don't go off and feed the online trolls. Right? If there's people online hoping to get you riled up, looking to pick a fight, just ignore them, block them. Don't post, don't repost anything obviously illegal. Right? Do a quick fact check. Right? Don't repost scams. Don't amplify fake news. Right? It's very, very easy. You could just double check before you save and share something. Just check it on Snopes. If you don't know what Snopes is, it's pretty great. Let me just so I think I've talked about this in my slides on research, but Snopes is a great, right, website that tracks urban legends and misinformation. So we look at what are the hot 50 fact checks over at Snopes right now? Coronavirus, cosmic rays, Nostradamus predicting the COVID-19 pandemic, right? So they just fact check all this stuff. Pretty useful. So if something seems like, one of the things about, so I talk about this in my fake news class, one of the things about fake news is that it works by creating something called activating emotions. There are emotions that make you want to do something. And activating emotions include anger, outrage, and awe, and surprise. They can be positive or negative, right? So anger and outrage are kind of negative emotions. Awe and surprise are positive emotions. And these are the ones that make you want to do something. Online, that often means sharing. So content that has activating emotions tends to be more shared. That means that if you create a headline or clickbait that makes you feel strong emotions, it's more likely to be shared. So when you're like, oh my gosh, I need to share this, that's actually a flag saying, oh, I better check that this is not something designed to get me to share it, right? So very prominent examples through the pandemic was, oh God, there are dolphins in the harbor of Venice or in the canals because there's less pollution. Surprise and awe about nature, but turns out that stuff's not true. Anger and outrage, political stuff is very big on that. A lot of it tends to be fake, so do your fact checking. Okay, that's all I want to say about that. Obviously, don't make private data public. Think of the reader reactions, and most important, just don't say anything online you wouldn't say to somebody's face, right? Just avoid sexism, avoid racism. Like, just don't do anything online you wouldn't say to an actual living, breathing human being in front of you, and you'll be perfectly fine. This is adapted from social networking rules over here. Okay, so we've done two things today. I wanted to talk a little bit about. Oh God, Braden said I got. NSA CSIS is always watching. I got into trouble in the Army over a Facebook post causing an international incident. Really? I feel like there's a story there, but maybe we shouldn't talk about it on YouTube because we don't want to start International Incident Part 2, Nuclear Boogaloo. That's super interesting. But yeah, obviously think carefully about what you share online. It could absolutely affect your personal and private lives. Okay, so two things I wanted to talk about today. Right? Think about your productivity and your workflow. Set SMART goals and create your Pomodoro clock. The Pomodoro technique sounds dumb, but once I got into it, it was crazy. Second thing, right? Rules for social media online in your workplace. Right? We have marketing. We have increasing internal use of media platforms in your workplace, and of course, your personal use. Right? Don't do anything dumb online. If it's on the internet, it's forever. Nothing's ever deleted from the internet. Came out of nowhere and lost a promotion over it. And gosh, that's definitely a story for over a beer when all this COVID stuff is done. Okay, so what are we looking at? 40 odd minutes, 42 minutes. Honestly, that's really all I have for today. The thing about this class is that since we're not meeting together and we're not working on exercises together, we're not doing presentations, we're going to slowly be winding down the content, and you're going to be really focusing on your work. That means getting your summaries in if they're not already, getting those research reports and presentations done, then you're going to be out of here. All right, so really get those research reports and presentations in. We're going to be checking in the next couple of weeks, making sure everything's working out all right. As always, send me an email if you're unclear about what to do. I'm absolutely available. Otherwise, that's it for me. I'll see you hopefully next week.